Speaker, there are a couple of benefits of being a team that's notionally from Oxford but is actually from Australia and New Zealand. First of all, it means you don't know what Doxbridge or Doxford is. It means you can stand above some of the caricatures that pervade UK debating about UK society. And that's what we're going to do in closing opposition. We want to provide real stakeholder analysis about who will move in this debate and who won't, and how this will lead to harms for cities and harms for individuals. I want to see this debate through the lens of three questions. First, I want to ask whether the proposal from the government benches is consistent with principles of welfare and principles of fairness, and this is going to be the analysis we have from closing government. Secondly, I want to ask who will move and who won't, and what will be the effects on cities and towns across the UK and other places. And thirdly, I want to ask, just mopping up some material from open opposition, whether there are meaningful alternatives to this policy and why they are mutually inconsistent. So let's look at the principles of welfare. We think we got some pretty shoddy analysis from closing government. We say that welfare is founded on the principle that everyone is entitled to a minimum standard of living. That's why we don't look at how people got into a position where they are depraved and disadvantaged. We say, regardless of how you got into this position, whether you made irresponsible choices when you were 15 or whether you were unlucky, we give you a set amount of welfare because we believe that everyone in our society deserves to be at this minimum standard. And we say we only restrict or condition that right under very narrow circumstances, Mr. Speaker. But that's because restricting that right is generally stigmatising, and restricting that right endangers that level of a minimum standard of living. So we restrict that right when it's to do with the individual behaviour, when we can show that the individual is committing a crime, or when the individual themselves is not seeking work. In this case, we are punishing individuals for something that is not related to individual behaviour. And this links in to a point of information I offered to opening government earlier in the debate. We are punishing these individuals for problems caused by the government and not problems caused by those individuals. Point number one is that's just generally inconsistent with principles of welfare that we stand up for. What did opening government say there in response to this? They said, oh well, maybe we can see this as the state fulfilling its duties, and actually these people might see it as a positive that the state is making an effort. We think that the individuals confronted by this policy won't see it this way. We think they're being set with an impossible choice, Mr. Speaker, because let's understand the types of people that we're talking about. We're not talking across the board about cultures of unemployment, brainwashing individuals in all small towns. And to that extent, we just think the government benches have drunk the Conservative Party Kool-Aid. We think the reason people are deciding to stay is because they have to look after a dying parent or a dying grandparent. Or it's because they have a particular cultural connection, like they live in North Wales and they're one of the few people that speak Welsh and they have an interest in benefiting their community. Go Wales, kids. We say what they've presented on this side of the house is a very simplistic idea of why these people are staying behind. What we got from closing government as well is family coercion. Let's be realistic. Like in some cases we think people will feel slightly coerced into looking after their dying grandparents. But we say in most cases people feel a genuine commitment to looking after their family and to staying behind. So we say this is creating an impossible choice which undermines principles of welfare. It's unfair. That's point number one that we bring you in this debate. No thanks. Let's look secondly at who will move and who won't. Okay, so let's see their case in the very best light, that people will migrate and we will get people moving into larger towns. First major question in this debate is, where do they get the jobs? The entire government bench has rested on the premise that they will be able to find the jobs, and I hope the government will be able to tell me now how they will find them.
Okay, so we think there's like loads of service and the service economy, right? But also, just by being in a place that is more vibrant, you get so many other services that the government is better able to provide, like the education system, or just like accessibility to culture.
So let's take two strands from that. There's the service-to-service economy, like things like tourism and restaurants. We just don't think unemployed people will be able to go start that up. The second strand of that answer seems to say, well, there are better government services, like we're just going to move them from Harlech in North Wales to Cardiff, but they'll stay on welfare and they won't actually get jobs. We don't think that's a meaningful answer to the problems in this debate. We still haven't heard an answer about how jobs will be created. We're talking about unemployment problems that are high in cities and in rural areas, right, ladies and gentlemen? We're talking about 10% unemployment in London at the moment. That's the big fallacy that that entire case is rested on. What did closing government say when Mitch asked this question in a point of information? We got, there'll be a multiplier effect, and there'll be a logarithmic benefit and a big curve. I don't understand what that means, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you do. But if we can see that in its best light, I assume they're saying there's going to be some sort of multiplier effect when people go and spend money and create jobs by sort of investing in industry. Okay, problem number one, these people don't have very much money to spend. They rely on like middle-class, wealthier individuals going in and investing in economies. Number two, ladies and gentlemen, we think there's a limited number of jobs in the economy at the moment. So what you're going to end up doing is crowding other people out in the cities and elbowing people out of jobs that are in existence at the moment, or people not getting jobs, and the build-up of a fringe, a permanent fringe on the edges of cities like London. We think those are really harmful effects. You don't get any logarithmic benefit or any multiplier consequence. You get people feeling resentful towards people coming in from outside the cities. You get people removed from their cultural connections who feel even more alienated, and we think that's a really damaging side effect. We want to hear the magic recipe for how these jobs will be created. We don't think we've heard it. But let's get you some analysis about those people that do stay. We say the people that do stay are those that are really committed to their communities, that have those family connections, and they've made the decision already, because they face this choice already, that those outweigh the possible economic benefits of bettering themselves, right? Because that calculus exists under the status quo. They already know when they live in Harlech in North Wales that Cardiff might be economically more prosperous. We say those people that choose to stay are left in abject poverty by this side of the house, who refuses to pay them welfare and lets them basically get sick and die, and refuses to provide state support. We say that's fundamentally unfair when everyone is entitled to a meaningful standard of living. We think it's sick, it's disgusting, and we're not happy to stand up for that on this side of the house. Moreover, it's not just these people that are affected, Mr. Speaker. We say there's a ripple effect on other people in these communities, because it means that those that are starting restaurants in small towns have to shut because of the lack of economic growth. We say other people in these communities, perhaps people that are running schools, have to close down those schools. It means the death of small towns in this country, and we, as an Australian and New Zealand team, don't want that either. So, let's look at the meaningful alternatives in this debate. We say that we've got some good analysis from opening opposition about the alternatives. We add that there have been successful government bailouts in the United States that have showed that for every $1 invested by the government, they get $25 back. We say the reason this is not mutually compatible is that you can't invest in these cities at the same time as you're telling people to go out, right? Like, talk about sending mixed messages and undermining development in these cities. You can't have your cake and eat it. We're very proud from Australia and New Zealand to stand up to ensure that we don't have the death of the United Kingdom.